didn't want to think. And if you know me, I love thinking. I love showing up. I love guiding people through their own journeys, asking the tough questions, getting sticky in their branding personally and professionally. That is my thing. It lights me up, but I didn't want to because I tried to be someone I'm not. And so it feels a lot smaller and you're better able to walk with it and thrive with it. I don't even want to say in spite of it, with it. And we do that using a lot of different techniques, but some of which just include leveraging your strengths, acknowledging those strengths.
Hi, Shauna. Welcome to the show.
So happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Welcome to Peak Performance Perspective, where we help entrepreneurs master health, wealth, and relationships. I must start you out by asking, what does peak performance mean to you?
Peak performance, other than a tongue tie, apparently, peak performance really, for me, is all about being fulfilled. So what does that even mean? So when I'm looking at peak performance, I mean that I'm able to really indulge in my passions, both personally and professionally, in a way that fuels my soul, in a way that keeps my energies up, my mood up. It doesn't feel like a drain. Like you're sitting there hauling. I actually used to say this story all the time that if you're carrying around a briefcase full of masks that you have to keep switching up, that gets heavy. Ditch it. You're going to excel in life. You're going to excel in business. You're going to excel in your relationships. You're going to feel fulfilled and joyful. That's peak performance to me.
What inspired you to embark on your journey of helping others step into their authentic power?
It's a really great question. I suppose it all started with feeling like I wasn't able to be my authentic self. And so when you can feel that firsthand, and when the way I learned to really indulge in some of the quirky bits of me that make me and how joyful it made, I said, no, this can't just be a one and done situation. I need to get other people on this bandwagon. How many people have I sat down with who have told me a story in secret, not in real secret, hush tones? It'll never work. And they brush it aside and I say, no, that was brilliant. I need you and the world needs you to step into that authentic power so that you can shout from the rooftops those amazing ideas you have to make the world a better place. It all started from my own transformation and realizing how impactful it was for me and how impactful I know it will be for so many others.
Who were you before this transformation?
I was the book nerd writer. I said things like, I'm a writer, not a talker. Nobody will believe me that today. Nobody. But I was that person. I was the person who would hide behind my books because I didn't really want to be seen, because I was afraid to be seen, because I knew what happened when I was seen. I was often ridiculed. I was often belittled and in one way or another told that I was less than. And that's a really tricky place to be, especially if you have so many big ideas floating around in your head. And I know every single dang one of you do. So hiding that doesn't help anybody.
You and I had a chance to connect on a pre-interview before the podcast where you were gracious enough to share a few things about yourself. How did the experiences with being bullied and the self-doubt that causes as a result of it shape the person Shauna is today, and moreover shape the professional she is today?
The degree of bullying that I experienced in my youth was probably to the moderate side. I wouldn't say it was extreme, but it was definitely moderate in such that people would push me down stairwells at school, against lockers, down the icy slopes. I'm here in Canada, so there are many of those. They'd throw ice balls at me, wait for me to come out of my friend's house before going to school just to throw things at me. It was really brutal. Some of the words that were said were really cutting. I would be lying to say that it didn't have a massive effect, especially in the moment. One thing that my mother told me, and it sticks with me, and I use this phrase all the time to my kids and to myself. She always said, you're better than that. You're better than that. And it was this way of saying, don't stoop to their level. Hold your head high and just be who you are. Doesn't excuse the terrible behavior of others, but it allows you to know that their behavior is theirs, right? They're struggling and walking a path that you know nothing about. You don't need to carry that weight with you. You can know that you're better than that. And so the cool thing about that is that it always had me thinking about the next way that I could improve the world around me. I hope that sort of starts to answer your question, but I'm an open book. So I'm willing to dive into anything.
So what did you do at the time? Because things are different when we look back at it. We are older now, we have more perspective now, we have children now, we've learned forgiveness. But in the moment, when you are being shoved into lockers and snowballs being thrown at you, pushed down icy hills, I also found it interesting that you categorized it as it was a moderate type of bullying. I didn't understand why you had to put a temperature on it. It sounds really harsh. How did you cope with it at the time? Because there are many people who are listening to this right now, perhaps have a child who's getting bullied in school, or they themselves are getting bullied at work. How did you cope with it at the time?
Yeah, absolutely. What I think happened, and this is really neat, and I'm not sure that it would happen for everybody, but I have a sneaking suspicion that it might, and to some degree, is it really tuned my ability to sniff out the good ones. And what do I mean by that? The people who have good hearts, the people who would be there for you no matter what, people who were honest, sometimes brutally, but loyal and loving. I was able to find them really quickly and nurture those relationships in a very deep and meaningful way. And so I really relied heavily on those relationships, on that community. Now, it was a small community. I can't lie and say that I had all of the friends. You can imagine I wasn't Miss Popularity, but the friends I had were good ones. The friends I had stuck with me. And that's what I would say is just turn toward the people who are there for you. And it doesn't have to be friends. It can be family. As I said, my mother was there for me. It can be siblings. It can be your therapist, for crying out loud. It doesn't matter. Just sniff out the good ones and keep them to your hip. Keep them right by your side. Because I think we underplay the value of community and the value of vulnerability in those spaces. And it was in those moments of vulnerability and reflection in the moment with friends that I was able to just let it be and internalize what my mom taught me. I'm better than that. Let them be. Let it go. That idea.
How did it shape your ability to trust other people due to those experiences?
Yeah, I would say that that's a tricky question. Like I said, I'm going to reflect back on that idea that I was good at sniffing people out. I would very quickly be able to determine whether or not somebody was right for my world or not. And I can't tell you exactly, there's no checklist. But it's more so the idea that if you embody yourself, if you really let yourself be who you're meant to be, then you know who's meant to be with you. And it's an intuitive feeling oftentimes. And don't get me wrong, I can't say that I was always right, but 9 times out of 10, I can tell you not only whether somebody was right for my world, but whether somebody was right for another person in my world. There were many times when I've told even my husband, before he was even my husband, he'd hang out with someone and I'd be, okay, sure, go. I'm not the kind of person to put a lid on anybody. Go hang out with whoever you want. But no, I think I'm going to hang back. Why? I'm just not sure about that person. And I just let it be. Within the next 2 years, that person shows their true colors. And then we realize, oh, wow, so that's why that alarm bell was going off. So I guess because I don't want to really say that I don't want to say that I mistrust people, more so that I can intuitively tell whether or not somebody's going to be a good fit for my world, for my, I don't know how woo you want to get, for my aura or my whatever you want to call it.
What were the emotions or realizations that came with late ADHD diagnosis? And how did that fit into everything in your life?
Yes, the late ADHD in women. That's a big thing right now. As we're realizing the serious lacking in studies and research for women's mental, emotional, and physical health. I could get on a soapbox about that, but I'm going to tell you about my experience because I know it for firsthand. So, the emotions. I had a hunch all along, so I can't say I was surprised. I was told in fifth grade, or at least my mother was told in fifth grade, my teachers thought I had ADD, which is now obsolete. They call it inattentive ADHD. It's still hyperactivity, but it's more internalized, so it's often found in the brain. So you'll get overthinking happening a lot rather than the fidgets and the bouncing and the outbursts. My mom told her, no, she's just a reader. She's just a thinker. She's just that type of person. Now, in hindsight, I now realize that I was overthinking. I was distractible because of my thoughts. So when I started to ease into the realization, it was, again, as I say, not surprising, but what is the emotion? We still have a lot of stigma around mental health. Women still have a lot of people within the healthcare system who don't believe them when they say their experiences. Many people do in general, but I can speak as a woman. So there was a hesitation in me to say to people that Prior to having an official diagnosis, this whole idea of being self-diagnosed was always poo-pooed upon in social circle. So I often would joke about it, say, I have a sneaking suspicion, and I would just go off on a tangent in that direction. So it was a journey really to being able to confidently say, hey, this is the thing. My brain works in funny ways. 5 minutes can feel like 3 hours or can feel like a snap for me. Time blindness is just ridiculous. A rejection sensitivity dysphoria, when I was able to put a name to that, it's a very real experience for many people with neurodiversities, in particular ADHD. But when I was able to put a name to it, it made me feel so much more relieved to be able to say, hey, I'm not just losing it. This is a thing, and I now have the tools to use to navigate that space. So you asked me about my emotions, and it was very much a multifaceted experience because there are so many layers to that experience. And I know that was a roundabout way of telling you it, but it was a very ADHD way of telling you it. So I stand by it.
When we look at our lives, there's so many events that shape us to be who we have become. And even though change and growth is gradual, almost always there's a moment that sticks out in our mind as this is where it all started. Can you share a specific moment or turning point where you embraced your authentic self?
Ooh, that's a tricky one. I have always felt like what you said first. I've always felt like everything feels gradual. I can't recall any real moment that was pivotal in me just going, aha, eureka, this is the realization. I really can't recall one solitary time. What I can do is I can describe a few instances that shed light on that transformation. So, one really interesting instance was actually relatively recently, I would say about 2 or 3 years ago. I was doing a talk live in person. It was just as we were allowed to do in person things after our lovely experience after 2020. And I was a keynote speaker and I was ready until I got there. And then I was not ready, like very not ready. I was standing at my booth previous to stepping up onto the stage. I was sweating. I was like hot, like too many glasses of red wine hot. It was an experience. I was shaking. I was moving things around on my table, just not even thinking. And I know the feeling I had was like I was ready to flee. It was that fight or flight. I was ready to go. I was like, no, I'm out. Bye. I was gonna go out the back door. There were many reasons for that. One of the reasons is because I chose very intentionally to wear my golden summer dress. It's not gold, it's like a beautiful golden yellow. It's a summer dress, and I wear it with leggings and cowboy boots, and I have my little braid and my gold glasses, and like, it's a very bumpkiny look, a very more of the casual side of business casual. And everyone else in the room was wearing collars, slacks. They were very like the business side of business casual, blouses. So I could tell right away that I stood out. But it wasn't in a bad way, but it was impacting me physiologically. And I'm going to just say I was ready to leave. The fear inside me was huge until I heard these lovely footsteps come up right behind me. And this wonderful woman just introduced herself to me, just nicely. Who's a few years my senior. I think she had a daughter about my age. And we just had a lovely short conversation. And I had to tell her this conversation, your warm smile, your willingness to approach someone who was clearly, I must have been to somebody with a keen eye like her, I must have been clearly in a bit of a distress, moving things around, calming myself down. I said, you changed everything for me in this moment. And I asked her, can I hug you? We had a hug. We moved on. I tell you this story because this was one of many instances where a small thing, I don't like using the word trigger because I feel like that's a overused word, but it definitely rubbed against my authentic self in a way that made me feel uneasy. And she allowed me to see what that was just with her warmth and love. And so after that lovely hug that she did concede to, I said, you know what? Yeah, I now see why I was feeling a little bit anxious here because I do stand out. That's the point. Just like one of those situations, you almost have to smack yourself in the face a little and go, wake up. That's the point. You're supposed to be yourself. Everyone else is taken. So that's one instance, but there are many like that occurred over the course of the last decade in particular that allowed me to realize the importance of being my authentic self and the permission to take ownership of some of my more vulnerable sides, including ADHD, including being bullied, including being imperfect. Oh, heaven forbid. That's just one of many.
So many of us have had traumatic experiences in the past. Some of them stick with us. And like a cake in an oven, they expand. And we oftentimes find ourselves with issues like self worth, not understanding our self worth. How did you transition from grappling with self-worth issues to becoming this not only confident version of you today, but an advocate for others?
You just unlocked a beautiful memory. I made friends, and this is one of many instances, but I made friends with a woman who is an Ayurvedic health counselor. And if anybody knows anything about Ayurveda, then you'll have an idea of where this is coming from. But if you don't, I'll let you know. Ayurveda is yoga's sister science, and it is millennia old, and it pertains to many different things, including gut health and an alignment of all different parts of yourself. This person particularly was helping moms to, I think she called it, to find their mojo. This was one of those moments, especially after motherhood. There were a few, of course, in adolescence and growing into my womanhood, but this one was after motherhood. Her role in my life was so pivotal, I think, in finding that self-worth again, over and above service, but including service. And so I was able to look in the mirror and say how much I love the different parts of me, and then to say how much I love everything within me, including my wonky brain. And then I was able to say, I get to use all of these parts that I love to love others and to help others and to advocate for others, to make sure others feel loved within and about themselves, but also within and about their communities. It's the one. Yeah. I hope she sees this, if I'm being honest. I'll share it with her.
Having gone through these experiences, having fought these battles, you have still found a way to be yourself, original, untainted, authentic. You now utilize that authenticity in not only in your own business, but you believe that authenticity is the most powerful tool that is out there for marketing and personal growth. In a world where we're just trying to make a buck to survive, how does one maintain authenticity in marketing? What does that even mean?
That's a really great question. And it actually really directly relates to your first question about peak performance, because I have this really cool thing that I call the two icities. They are simplicity and authenticity. And here's the thing, the more authentic you allow yourself to be, the simpler everything else becomes. Choices, right? When I decided that I like leggings and earth tones and my braid, I like them. They make me feel good. They're easy. I bought 6 pairs of leggings, and that's all I wear. And I don't care if somebody wants me to wear jeans. I got leggings. It's fine. Slacks? Nah, I got leggings. It's all right. I can dress them up, dress them down. My life got easier. Very simple. Simplicity reigned. And then I was able to focus on things that were more important to me. I didn't have to worry about what pants I was going to wear. So I dug into what makes me more authentic. And that allowed me to make simpler choices around other things, just my wardrobe. And so you see, it's cyclical. The simpler life becomes, the more you're able to lean into your authentic self. And the more you're able to lean into your authentic self, the simpler life becomes. So you take these two icities and you show up in life that way, it becomes more joyful, more fulfilled. You show up in business that way, you become more joyful, more fulfilled. If you're showing up in business joyfully and fulfilled, you don't think people notice? How many people out there in this world are just working for the buck? Head down to the grind. Performative, making relationships, actually caring. You're going to attract the people who want that in their world. And I'm going to argue, most people do. They may not know it consciously yet, but subconsciously, even the most successful people, if they're not also fulfilled, they're yearning for it. And they're going to reach out to the people who have somehow found it, even though it's not something to be found.
I think they're comfortable. I like hoodies. That's what makes me feel at ease. I'm gonna wear it. If somebody doesn't like it, if somebody doesn't like it, they don't like it. But when we put ourselves out in business and we are being our authentic self, sometimes we're worried we're not good enough because there's a lot at stake here. What if my authentic self is not good enough to attract clients? And therefore, I need to get a mask out of the basket of masks so I can look attractive, so that I could pay the bills because people would buy for me. How do you help clients overcome this mindset of not being good enough?
It's the classic, right? Imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome is fear. And fear can be challenging. It is what it is. It's scary, right? I'm a pretty big Harry Potter fan. I've got the Marauders map back here and some Harry Potter people in behind. And even Harry, when the Boggart comes out of the closet, he shows that he's actually, the thing he fears most is fear itself. And that can be debilitating. While my specialty is in branding and marketing, I also have a background in psychology and neuroscience. So I have the privilege to work with people through their confidence, their struggles with self-confidence, their struggles with self-worth, as we've discussed, through this very real imposter syndrome, through this fear. And I know we want to make a buck right away. Everybody wants that right away. And there are ways to do that. For sure. There are ways to do that. They may not feel aligned. We get a lot of people feeling used car salesman-y on both ways, and that presents its own kind of challenges. So I help people to take that fear and just walk with it. I'm not the kind of person who to say, we're going to vanquish imposter syndrome or fear or anything. I don't think that exists really. It's like grief. You don't get rid of it. It doesn't go away. It stays there. But you grow and expand beyond it. And so it feels a lot smaller. And you're better able to walk with it and thrive with it. I don't even want to say in spite of it, with it. And we do that using a lot of different techniques, but some of which just include leveraging your strengths, acknowledging those strengths. I don't know if you want me to get into the marketing side of things, but there are tactical ways to do it as well, to not only work through the imposter syndrome, but also leverage it to attract clients and get sales. I just don't know how deep you want to go.
How can someone identify some of their unique strengths? Because the archetype of person we're talking about, if you're suffering from some trauma, if you've had some bad experiences in your past, and you're thinking that I'm really not good enough, my authentic self isn't good enough, you're blind to your own unique strengths, right? So how do you, if somebody's listening to this, and this, that's totally me, what would
Yeah.
Shauna say is the first or second thing this person can do to begin to identify their unique strengths that makes them authentic in both life and business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really great segue into kind of the conversation around this jar that people put themselves in. Some people use a jar, some people use cookies. I like to use a jar because jam's delicious. Cookies are too, okay, but we're going to use jar. So you're floating around there in your jar. And I'm actually not going to own this because I was taught this years and years ago from another marketing expert. So I'm not owning this, but it is relevant. You're floating around in your jar with all these ingredients and you're a freaking tasty jam, right? But you can't necessarily pinpoint each and every ingredient because you're floating around in it. And you can't read your label because you're in the jar. So I always suggest to reach out to someone so that they can read your jar. Someone trusted, keep in mind, someone knowledgeable as well. I have a friend who will tell me like it is when I say, hey, and it can be very simple things that and little steps that can make all the difference. I said to a friend of mine, when you think of me, what color do you think of? She says, yellow. At the time, this was many years ago, at the time, my brand color was teal, and I had been feeling misaligned with that. I asked myself, why did I choose that color? I think I had fallen into it in hindsight. She said yellow. I said, oh, it's interesting. Another friend says green, but not like green, like earthy green, this beautiful, something deep and resonant. Okay, so definitely not teal, not blue, yellows and greens. Okay, but what does that mean to you? What do I mean to you? How do I make you feel when I'm present and when I'm gone? Exploring that, having that conversation with someone, diving into your core values. What do you stand for? This sort of reflection can really help you to take the first steps in showing up authentically, because you need to show up authentically for yourself first. You need to be honest with yourself first. The other thing I wanted to note about showing up authentically, and you didn't bring this up, but you brought it to my consciousness just a little while ago, is when I say showing up authentically or marketing authentically in your business, there are some people who will use that word and they'll twist it a little bit. It's a big buzzword right now. I know. I'm not new. I hang out. I get it. It's a buzzword. You've been rolling your eyes, not you, maybe Mark, but our audience here might be rolling their eyes. Okay, I get it. I know. I've been around the block a time or two. I don't care what you call it. Genuine, uniqueness, the unicorn, whatever you want to call it. When I say it, I don't mean air your dirty laundry. I don't mean record yourself ugly crying in the closet with a thing at Haagen-Dazs. Okay, that's not what I mean. I mean, be brave enough, have the courage to be vulnerable, right? Set boundaries. There's a huge vulnerability in setting boundaries. We can explore that another time, but there is. I know one of my clients said she refuses to show where she lives or her children. Not a problem. You can still be professional, vulnerable, authentic, and transparent while keeping that part behind closed doors. That's okay. You're allowed to have that boundary. So just reflecting internally and allowing a trusted other to guide you through your own jelly will help you to navigate what does this look like to show up authentically for me. Everyone is going to be different, and that is the way it's meant to be. If we were all the same, wouldn't it be boring, Mark? Goodness gracious. I don't want to see a bunch of Shaunas walking around. I'm happy I'm not a twin. My goodness.
My wife is an identical twin.
I'll bet you they are so beautifully unique. even if
They're
they
very
look
different.
similar.
Very different. Yes.
That's it. That's exactly it.
Can you give an example of a moment where you struggle to show up authentically yourself?
I can think of many moments. Truth, look at we are living in a world where the external pressures to be something you're not are extreme. We live in a world where social media alone, never mind walking down the street, where social media alone is telling you that you're not good enough, that you should be this way, that way, the other way. So yeah, I'm human just like the next person. I know there were a few times showing up on Instagram when I was first exploring what does it look like to create graphics beyond just the posting of a picture. And so I was really adopting other people's methodologies and I was trying to learn. And that's okay. P.S. That's okay. Learning from others and experimenting, that's how you find out where your true calling was. But then I had somebody, an expert, very good at what they do, tell me this is how it's done. It's done. Okay. So Shauna did it that way. I did it how it's done. Turns out that's not actually how it's done. And as much as I do, there are so many different ways to execute on a plan on social media and anywhere in life. So I did it the way she said, and no surprise to present me, but past me burnt out very quickly. 3 weeks in executing on this plan, I was tired. I was miserable. I didn't want to show up. I didn't want to tell people about the way I could transform their life, or the way, better yet, the way they could transform their life just by hanging out with me. Like I just wanted to sit down and I just sit down. That's it. I didn't want to do anything. Didn't want to think. And if you know me, I love thinking. I love showing up. I love guiding people through their own journeys, asking the tough questions, getting sticky in their branding, personally and professionally. That is my thing. It lights me up. But I didn't want to because I tried to be someone I'm not. It was stupid in hindsight, but it was a lesson and I'm glad I learned it. And now I have so many more strategies that I get to implement and that I get to teach others to implement in the meantime. Silver lining.
Given your vast experience, your personal life, the discoveries you've made, your formal education and interest in neuroscience, how do you use neuroscience principles to design marketing strategies that resonate with audiences?
So yes, I am. So as I pointed out before, I have Harry Potter stuff on my walls. I don't have my degrees on my walls. I think they might be in my garage. I don't know. I don't put a whole ton of onus on that sort of thing. However, I do have a degree in psychology. I do have specialization in developmental psychology and neuroscience. I am a graduate, another degree in English, rhetoric, and professional writing. Rhetoric, very simply put, is words that get people to take action. So how do I use that when I'm creating branding and marketing and navigating the very real human experience of being an entrepreneur? The answer to that is a little complex, but I'll do my best. Marketing and branding, it's a coin, right? It's a two-sided coin. On one side, you have the business owner, the entrepreneur. Keeping in mind, I typically work with solopreneurs and micro businesses, some small businesses, but typically those two. So on that side, you have the person who's wearing all the hats, right? They're doing the work, they're making all the choices, they're showing up, they're providing the service, or a very small team is providing the service. And you need to create the branding and the marketing in a way that will be in alignment with that person or the small group of people. That means that all of the messaging needs to feel true to them. They need to feel confident in their messaging. They need to know that when they show up and they have to say their pitch or whatever it is, number one, they know it by heart, but not because of practicing necessarily, but because it's true, because they can feel it. They need to know that when the basics of, let's say, frequency, cadence of showing up, that it works for them and their team in such a way that allows them to live life fully alongside launching, promoting, etc., growing their business. So that's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is, of course, following that invisible hand, your market, understanding how they think, understanding what's in alignment with them, understanding their goals. You've got the demographics, their psychographics are just as, in fact, even more important than the demographics. So really digging in to who that person is. So who is the person running the business? Who is the person they're trying to meet? And how do you bridge that gap using effective branding and marketing? How do you do it in a way that's emotive? How do you do it in a way that triggers not only your conscious thinking mind, but also your subconscious feeling mind? We need people to understand the value of branding and marketing in a way that is connective, in a way that forms relationship. So you can imagine psychology, neuroscience, and the art of persuasion come in handy when we're developing all of the things necessary to do such a thing.
Can you give a specific example of a client that you worked with and demonstrate like how you balanced the analytical marketing strategy with the emotional connection and authenticity? Just so that audience members can understand like how it's different than the conventional way of doing it.
Absolutely. So you're going to get these big agency, big guru type people telling you, and in fact, I bought it too. This is how it's done. This is how you will achieve success. You must post this many times, create this type of content, show up in this capacity, use this dialogue, these script template. I don't subscribe to that. Instead, what we do is we say, okay, first, what kind of life do you want to live? That's first, okay? Because if you want to live a life where certain hours are off limits because you need to pick up your kids from school, or you are getting ready to send your kids off to university, or you are committed to bettering your relationship every Friday night, I don't know, anything, it doesn't matter. I want to read a book on Sunday all day with my tea in the window, rain or shine. That's what I wanted. Okay, cool. Let's do that. I rock climb every Saturday morning. Awesome. Love that. Let's not do anything on Saturday. Whatever that is. Another really great example is I can only record 2 videos a week without getting burnt out. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. So you want to live a life where burnout isn't a part of the conversation. Who doesn't? So we look at what kind of life do you want to live? What kind of energies do you want to have, both for your business and for your life? What are your ultimate goals in your business? Because there are a variety of goals. And so you need to have a strategy that matches that goal. Are you looking for awareness? Are you looking for followers? Are you looking for sales? Do you understand that you need awareness and followers for sales? There are so many moving pieces. But one of the reasons I use kids going off to university is because one of the individuals who I supported, her children were going off to university. And so there was some extra time, but at the same time, she didn't want to necessarily spend that time creating and connecting and hopping on calls over and above what her capacity gave, because energy only comes in a certain quantity throughout the day for some people. So we needed to design a plan that allowed her to take regular breaks from conversation, from recording, because those things were very draining for her, and more time dedicated to some of the tasks that would further her business and maintain or elevate her energy. So we were able to tweak and change to the point where she was showing up on video once or twice for marketing purposes. She was hopping on calls and networking for a certain number of times and creating content in a way that lit her up. Right? And we're planning ahead of time. We're not creating in the moment, because in the moment, somebody might get sick. A daughter might come home from university and want to spend time. Hey, mom, you want to go to lunch? Yeah, she wanted to have that. Not a, oh, honey, I'm supposed to be writing this thing. No, that's not how we live life. We're talking peak performance. We do what we want because we've got a strategy that supports us. I know this wasn't very detailed, but what I'm trying to really articulate is that it's very customized, is that it's very much in tune with who you are, who you want to be, and where you want to take your business. And so there are a lot of strings that need to be pulled. Here's what I usually show people. I don't have a slide right now, so I'm going to use my hands. If anybody can see me, you'll get it. If you can't see me, I'll try to describe it. I've got my 2 hands open on both sides. We're going to call them circles. Let's pretend that there's a circle on each side. One side, this is all of the things that you really love to do. It's how you love to show up. It's what lights you up. It's your personal and professional joys and the way you can transform lives based on you. It's that side of the coin. On the other side, we have your audience, what they love to consume, how they love to consume it, how frequently they love to consume it, and the overlap. I've made a Venn diagram with my 2 circle hands. The overlap is where your strategy sits. We figure out the details from both sides and we put together what overlaps so that you have a strategy that invigorates you and that is effective in attracting and converting your clients. Probably should have led with that.
Shauna is known for asking tough questions. And we're lucky to have people in our lives who ask us tough questions, because almost always everybody's just giving us a pat on the back and saying that things are great. If I'm listening to this podcast and I'm struggling with my business, I'm having trouble authentically showing up for my business every single day. Maybe there are things that I'm afraid to do, tasks that I know I need to do, but I'm not doing it. What is one tough question Shauna would ask?
Well, it's a very broad situation. I'll be honest. That's a very broad situation. I think based on how broad the circumstances that you described, I would probably start by asking what do you think is holding you back from doing the thing? And it sounds like such a simple question, right? But the point here, and this is something that you get taught in psychology, especially counseling psychology, is, and coaching, many coaches know this very well, is you got to get your person talking. So the question dives deep because you're now meant to talk to me. Why do you think you're not doing the thing? Now, we may land on topics such as fear, such as mental health. Very well. It could be self-doubt. I've tried this before and it hasn't worked. Why should I try it now? Okay, where did you try it before? How didn't it work? Was it an execution thing? Did it not work because you weren't consistent with it? Why do you think you weren't consistent with it? How do you think we can structure your day in such a way that would support those habits? Because remember that a part of psychology and neuroscience really revolves around the way you behave, right? Behavioral psychology, habit formation. Many of us have read at least Atomic Habits by James Clear. That's just one of many books that you could read to understand the importance of habits in your day-to-day. So a lot of my questions will ask things that internally and externally might be influencing your habits and your behavior and your thought. And so we can dive deep into that aspect of things and develop strategies that can support you in all that you're doing. Another really great read is, and I'm still that book nerd. I'm still that book nerd. I just don't hide behind books. I just throw my books at people and tell them, hey, you should read this. Another really great book is Gretchen Rubin's The Four Tendencies. In that book, we find out that people have tendencies that can be leveraged in different ways in order to create success for themselves and the world around them. One of the tendencies is really cool because she gives you a strategy to circumvent it using the gym as an analogy. So for that one, when those are extrinsically motivated to do a thing, if you want to go to the gym and you're really having a hard time going to the gym, find a partner to go with you, number one. But this is a two-part step or a series here. Find a partner to go with you. This is accountability. At the end of every time you go with them, trade your left shoe, because now you're not just accountable to meeting there, but you're accountable because you've got their left shoe, man. You've got to go. So that is a really cool way to circumvent certain types of hesitations or blocks around behaviors. It can get deeper than that, of course, depending on what's going on. I've even had people who are like, I suspect I might have ADHD. And I was like, in that case, let's figure out some workarounds for that in particular, because those are unique as well. So long story short, there are a lot of sticky, tough questions that need to be asked in order to get to the root cause, because I don't believe in putting a Band-Aid on it. We're not putting lipstick on a pig, okay? We're solving the root problem so that you can consistently show up for yourself in a way that feels aligned and in a way that achieves the success that you want to see for yourself personally and professionally. It needs to be sustainable or it's not worth it.
You could give advice to a younger version of you, especially during the challenging years. Being where you are right now, what's the advice you would give that young Shauna?
You know what's funny? I think I was asked that recently and I don't remember what I said. So let's see what Shauna tonight says. What would I tell a younger version of myself? Ooh, right. It sounds lame. You got this. I think the younger version of me just needed a little extra confidence, like a vote of confidence. And obviously, coming from older version me, that confidence is pretty good, because then if older version me says, you got this, then it's like, yes, I do. But just in general, I think just everybody, including younger me, needed that vote of confidence for somebody else to say, hey, man, you're doing a great job. Keep at it. Don't give up. When it's hard and when it doesn't look so hard, like when people are succeeding, tell them that. And when they're struggling, that's what I think that's where I'd come from. Obviously my verbiage might change, but that's it. And I think more people need to tell one another that as well. Just in general, I don't care if you know a person. If you see somebody, tell them, you're doing a great job, man. I don't care if you know them or not. Do it.
You're such an incredible person, not just because of the way you approach marketing and building people up, but also because you had 1,001 reasons to not end up being the way you are, especially having given the traumatic experiences that you had in the past, the diagnosis of ADHD. All the times, these are reasons, but end up becoming crutches for us. And they stop us from being able to walk fast and get to the destination that we want to get to. I think the unique thing about you is that not only did you not allow them to become obstacles or crutches, you leaned into them and found a way to make them unique strengths of yours. And that has allowed you to be in the position that you are today. Your story is a story of resilience. Your story is a story of transformation. Your story is a story of really believing in oneself and accepting oneself as whoever they are and not allowing the world with a cookie cutter methodology put us in a box and slap a label on us and stick in a room. So It was an honor and a pleasure talking to you. What are some last words you have for our audience members?
What you said is true. Don't let the world put you into a mold. All too often, we let our circumstances condition us to thinking something different about ourselves than we know is true. Dig into your knowing. There's another book, Untamed, Glennon Doyle. But dig into your knowing and don't let that cookie cutter fall on you. Because what happens when that happens, it cuts off some of the most amazing parts of yourself. So avoid those cookie cutters. Avoid contorting into boxes. Burst out of it and just be. You've got this. Like I said, thing I'd tell myself, tell you right now. You've got this. Even if you don't think so, you do. Trust yourself.
So much for being on the show. I hope to talk to you soon again.
We will.